Hi, in this video we are going to talk about character in fiction. When I say the term character while I'm talking about fiction, I mean that character is the representation of a person or sometimes an animal or other thing in a story. You are probably familiar with many famous characters throughout time, such as Batman, the Cat in the Hat, or even Cartman from South Park. We connect to these characters even though they are fictional, meaning made up. We may feel as if we know these characters just as well, or sometimes even better, than real people. How does that work, though, if these characters are completely made up? We get to know characters well through the process of characterization, which is just another word for how an author tells the reader about a character. There are many ways that an author can characterize a character, including having the narrator describe the character, by showing how a character acts and behaves, by telling the reader what a character thinks and says, by showing the reader how other characters behave in reaction to the character, and by showing the reader what other characters say and or think about the character. Let's do some imaginary practice. Imagine that you are at a new school and have a new teacher. The teacher is going to be our character. You want to know what this teacher is like. How will you find out? Through characterization. When you first walk into class, you can observe the teacher. She's smiling, so you can maybe think that she's at least kind of nice or happy. As you keep observing, you see that the teacher isn't sitting behind her desk, but instead walking around the room. She seems to be comfortable with students. You can't hear her thoughts, obviously, but you do hear her speak and ask Jimmy how his new job is going, so you can infer that she cares about students' lives. Many students seem interested in speaking with her, while you observe how people act around her, and they ask her questions, so it seems that she's a popular teacher. Finally, you listen to what other people have to say about her. A student next to you tells you that the teacher is the best one in the school. All of those aspects help you, the reader, to understand a character, in this instance, your teacher. In fiction, characters can be sorted into categories. Two of those categories are protagonist and antagonist. You remember from your Greek and Latin word parts that pro means first or main. A protagonist is the main character in a story. The protagonist is the character who has the problems. Remember that anti means against. The antagonist is the character, or sometimes a thing, that causes the problems for the protagonist. Keep in mind that there is not always an antagonist, or sometimes there is more than one. In this picture, we see the protagonist, Superman, fighting off all the antagonists, the villains. Another two categories into which characters can be sorted is dynamic and static. Dynamic characters are those characters whose behavior and or beliefs change throughout the story. Real people are dynamic. Our actions and beliefs change all the time, depending on the day and the situation. Well-written characters are also dynamic. Static characters are the opposite. Static characters stay the same throughout the story. This means that they are usually not main characters. In this picture, we can remember that Batman is a dynamic character. He has to go through a major life event and change his beliefs in order to become Batman originally. The Joker, however, is static. He is always a villain and always will be. So, while you are reading fiction, think about character. We should always think about characterization. How do you, the reader, get to know the character? Protagonist and antagonist, and dynamic and static.